Hi guys, Steffen Schmidt again. This is a little overview of the second week. So we are, um, pardon that, I'm capturing a little video here. We are basically going to take a look in this second week at sort of the coastal environment, let's say. And the first question that we have that you can see here on the course week 2 um, folder is kind of what is coastal. You're going to read chapter 3 in Against the Tide, which is basically a chapter that deals with um, armoring the coast. And the reason you need to armor the coast is because you have a lot of people living on the coast and you need to protect it. There's interesting information about Montauk that feeds into that whole discussion. A wonderful video, The Surveyors, which I'll talk about in a second, basically deals with how the first real science of coastal measurement and engineering took place, and then something about a coastal population trends report. And I think you'll find that report not just interesting, but really extremely significant, and significant for your own future studies as well. So let me talk a little bit first about kind of what is coastal. Paul Schmidt was teaching here with us, prepared this, and he and I worked on it a little bit. It's fairly basic, but it has some information in it that might refresh your memory. There's a little bit about the theory on the origin of the oceans, and a little bit on the plate tectonics, which we must never forget. You know, as we're dealing with coastal regions, of course, we are, as you will recall, dealing with moving a moving target, essentially. You know, the oceans are not, and the coastlines, therefore, are not just sitting there. They're constantly moving around. It's good to remember that. The video about National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and their incredible significance, and how incredibly interesting it was how we got to measure our coasts from the work that they did, and then a few statistics about the jobs generated in coastal areas. And what you can see here from this table, if I can get it to come up a little closer to us here, is that jobs generated in coastal states are tremendously high, and gross domestic product generated in coastal states is also higher than in other places. And then you can see how the country is divided up into various regions for basically administrative purposes. This is a course on coastal policy, so how the Army Corps of Engineer regions are divided, and how different they are from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and from the EPA over here on this end is kind of interesting. So that is basically a discussion that we can have about the you know, sort of background to oceans and coasts. Wanted to show you very briefly the report that you're going to be looking at, which I think is tremendous, and it's called The Population Trends Along Coastal United States. It's very current. It is very easy to read. You don't have to read the entire thing word for word. Please don't try to do that, because it's pretty long. But do try to inform yourself about some of the sort of important general numbers that exist. It's you know, the statistics. Here's a statistic about 153 million Americans living in coastal counties in 2003, and that number, of course, has grown. Some interesting information about the different coastal zones. You can see here that we're not talking only about the Northeast and the West Coast, but about the Great Lakes as well. They constitute about 18% of what we call coastal, so the Great Lakes are very important as well in that regard. We have some good sort of graphics about the population of coastal counties and population changes. Coastal counties only have 53% of the country's population, and yet they make up only 17% of the land. So you can see that they're a favorite place for people to basically live. And then over here you can see some numbers on population density in the United States. Non-coastal counties, which are the orange ones, are much less dense. Coastal counties, which are these blue ones, are very dense, and coastal states are more dense than the rest of the United States. So the coastal zone is definitely a place where people like to be. The other thing that I was going to call to your attention was that from the information that we have here in the set of assignments that we've given you, the thing to try and come away with, in other words, the takeaway from this is that when we finally began to really seriously look at coastal areas as important venues for the United States, we ended up with some fantastic science.
200 years ago, a vital mission began. Its scope? To survey every nook and cranny of the coasts of the United States. Its purpose? To ensure the safe passage of people and goods by ship. This ongoing endeavor has its roots in the first days of our nation. At the time, shipwrecks plagued the country. Commerce was jeopardized.
Well, I think I've given you a taste there for the NOAA video on the history of surveying in the United States, which is the groundwork for everything that's come since in terms of coastal science. It's fascinating. It's terrific if you can come away with that and with a feeling for the dynamics of the coastal zones in terms of population and so on. I think you will be impressed with why a course on coastal zone management and coastal policy is so important. It is, that's where the action is, folks. I know that there's been a slight decline in growth of the population of coastal areas since Katrina and since the recession, but I can guarantee that the coastal areas are still the most dynamic, the most attractive, and a very important part of the United States. And for us, of course, they are where we are going to concentrate our study. So hope you enjoy the stuff in week 2. I think